Today we're going to look at how to start up a Spring Web application using Eclipse. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my terminal on a Mac or a command prompt on a PC. And I'm going to check my Java version. You could easily do this by typing Java-version on both systems and you'll be able to see which version you have. Now I have 13 installed, so that's really important to remember. So whichever version you have, just make sure you note that. Now that I know which one I have, I'm going to close off my terminal. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the website start.spring.io. Here we could go ahead and create our starter project for Spring. So we could go ahead and create our web app. I'm going to leave it on the setting for Maven. I'm going to use the language Java. I'm not going to use any of the snapshots yet because they're not ready for release. That's the ones that are ready for release right here are 2.5, 2.5, which is the latest one they have right now. So I'm going to leave it on there. The group is usually the reverse of your website. So, in our case, for like valencia.edu, it'd be like edu.valencia or like gasai.com. So I'm just going to put com.gasai. So that's the reverse of that. This is going to be a demo, so I'm going to call this like Spring Demo. And I'm going to leave that there. This seems to be fine. I'm going to leave it as a jar file. Now this is important. Remember, I had version 13. So I'm able to run 11 and 8 on my system. I cannot do 17 because I don't have that installed on my system. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 11. Keep in mind that most industry is probably still running on 8 and they have not advanced that. So that would be different if you're in the work environment. But for our example environment, I'm just going to pick the one I could possibly use, which is 11. And I'm going to add some dependencies because this is going to be a web app. So I'm going to make sure to add Spring Web. And I'm going to be using some HTML to modify the website. So I want to make sure I use like a template engine called Timeleaf to help me with that. So I'm going to add that too. So if you also need to add a database to your website, you could also add the dependency for any kind of SQL, like JDBC API or Spring Data, which is usually the ones that are most popular right here, Spring Data and Hibernate. But we're not creating one right now, so I'm just going to leave that as is. So I'm going to escape out of that. Now this all looks good. I'm going to go ahead and click on generate, and it's going to create a file for me to download. So it's in my downloads as a zip folder. So I'm going to take a look at that. I'm going to minimize this. So it created a zip file for me, as you can see. I'm just going to open it up, unzip it, and create on the Mac here. I'm just going to open it up for me so I'm ready to use it. I'm going to pull up Eclipse right here, and I'm going to import it into Eclipse. I'm going to kind of shrink this down. There we go. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to do import, import, and we want to do a Maven. So I don't want to do a general. I want to go all the way down to Maven because remember we picked a Maven for Spring Boot. And I'm going to select existing Maven projects, and I'm going to click next. It was on my desktop, so I'm going to select my desktop here, and I found a project, Spring Demo, and I'm going to click open. And then a POM file, it should search your directories to find this POM file.xml. That's what it's looking for, and once it does, be checked off. So make sure it's able to find this, and once it does, you click on finish. It's going to add it down here. There it is, Spring Demo. And while it's adding it, you'll notice down at the bottom here that it's kind of installing some of the dependencies that it had from Spring. So reaching out to Spring to load up. Now, it did it pretty fast on my system, but it actually, even though it's show that it's finished, it's not always completely done. I've noticed in the past it takes some delay. So as I'm going through the directory here, we'll notice that in the main part, you'll have like a demo application. You'll also be in your, when you do your testing, you have an area for your testing as well. So you'll have that as well. So ready to go. Your resources area in the templates, this is where you could be building like your HTML files, so you could have a better looking website. We're not going to get into that because this is just a starter for right now in this video. So we're just going to show a quick demo of how you could use Java to build the website there. There's that POM file that we talked about. If you open it, you'll see that it has all the dependencies we talked about. It has the starter web, which we talked about adding for the web app, and then the time leaf right there, right? So we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to do that. So okay, so let's see. Now, right now it doesn't have anything going on, so I'm just gonna kind of just leave this running right now. This has nothing to run yet. We haven't really added anything out. It should pull up like a default class of some sort on the web itself on local 880. I believe it doesn't have anything correctly right now, so this could be an error on your system, or it might not show up at all. It depends what it is. We're going to go ahead and try to run it as a Java application. So we could right click on a Java file here, run as Java application, and it's going to show down here Spring Boot going on, and it started it on port 880. So let's take a look to see if it actually pulls up the just do this way. Yeah, it has an error going on mine, so it doesn't pull up that default page. So I'm just going to just leave it there for a second, and I'm going to fix this. So I'm going to stop the running of this, and I'm going to actually just create a controller. So this is a new class, and I'm just going to call it page controller and finish. Now, while we're here on page controller, I'm going to add some annotations to help it link up to Spring. So this one is going to be called REST controller. It won't know what that is. It'll highlight it. You could just go hover over it and import REST controller. And you can see it imported from the Spring framework, and that's good. And the other thing we need is get mapping. I spelled that wrong. There we go. And it won't know what that is, so I'm going to hover over it. It doesn't like it. Okay, maybe finish the rest of get mapping right here, which is the current directory, the localhost 880, and then we've got to create a method underneath it called index, which is just going to return a string. We have our web page. So there we go. Let's see if I could get it now. There we go. Import get mapping. I get that annotation right there, so it knows what it is. It's connected to Spring Framework. So what it does is that this is controller for the pages, and then the other thing is get mapping, meaning which this method here that I created is going to be associated with the current directory of local 880. Right, so we could create another one. We'll do that in a second, but for right now, that's what we're doing. And I'll go back to the application, and I'm just gonna run that this time. And it's gonna start up again. Should be no issues. That's good. I'm gonna pull up the web page again. I'm gonna refresh it, and it might take a second. So it has an error. So I'm just actually. That's confusing. Let's go back down. Oh, it has some issues here. Let's see. Invalid character. So I had some issues going on here. Oh, you know what? I probably didn't save it all. Let's see. Most likely, maybe that's what happened. I'm not too sure. So let's stop this. And then let's run it again. And go back. There we go. So I didn't save my progress there. So we have our web page. That's what was on our area here. Now, I could do others. Now, normally you would want to do this in other controllers. You don't want to put all your mapping in one controller. But just for example, I'm just going to say about. This is the about page, and then public string information return. We are learning Spring Boot Web. So there, I'm going to save that. I'm going to stop this. I'm going to go back and run this again. So it should be running. I'm going to refresh this. It's going to say the same thing. We didn't change that, but I'm going to go to about. And there we go. So now the page about after that is we are learning Spring Boot Web. So there we go. There's your introduction to Spring Boot. You will have more videos to follow to learn more about how we could build upon this. Thank you.